Today I'm going to share my top 7 tips with you for starting and maintaining the carnivore diet. Hey, what's shaking bacon? I talk to a lot of people that are trying to start the carnivore diet and they have a rough time sticking with it because the first little bit is the toughest and after that it gets pretty easy. But how does it get easy? How do you maintain this? It's pretty difficult to keep something like this up in the beginning when you're dealing with sugar and carbohydrate addiction. So what are a few tips that I have? Well, let's go over them now. I believe tip number 1 is stay satiated. So you want to eat to the point where you get full. But it's interesting, when you're doing a carnivore diet, your hunger signals are a little screwed up because you're used to eating carbohydrates, which get you full and stuffed. If you're used to eating till you get stuffed, you get to the point where you feel bloated and tired and you think, oh, I can't eat anymore. Well, what you're going to notice is that doesn't happen. You get to the point when you're eating just meat, especially if you're sticking to red meat, which I highly recommend, you're going to get to the point where you just can't eat anymore. And you're going to quickly learn that's being satiated. And there's a difference between being full and being satiated. So you want to eat to the point where you're always satiated. You almost can't get full doing a carnivore diet, especially if you're sticking to red meat. The higher fat concentration in the red meat just makes you more satiated. You just can't eat as much, and it's a great place to be. So if you're used to eating till you're full and you like the feeling of that stretched out stomach, you're sort of addicted to that because that's its own type of eating disorder. And you're used to binge eating, this is something to help manage that problem because one problem at a time. You're used to binge eating mainly because of your carbohydrate addiction as well as some emotional components sometimes. But when you're doing a carnivore diet, we're going to tackle carbohydrate addiction first. And then after that, we can start worrying about binge eating once you've been doing this for a few months and you want to start working on something new because this is becoming old hat. You're familiar with it and you're not really having any problems. My second suggestion is eat when you're hungry. Don't try and fast in the beginning, at least for the first 3 months. I know lots of people are saying out there, fasting's the best thing to do. Not when you're trying to start a carnivore diet, it's not. It's when you think you're going to try an intermittent fast, you're setting yourself up for a failure. You're trying to do too much all at once. You're trying to start a new way of eating and you're trying to start intermittent fasting. That's a lot to handle all at once. I recommend always eating till you're satiated and then eat when you're hungry. Don't wait till you're hungry before you eat again. If anything, you want to do a bit of a preemptive strike sometimes, even if it means having a snack. A snack when you're doing carnivore isn't going to cause any problems. It's more important right now that you're sticking with the carnivore diet than your eating habits as far as how many calories you're getting in a day and how much you're eating in a day and the volume of what you're eating. I want you to stay satiated. As soon as you start getting hungry, you're going to start giving into some old habits. And that carbohydrate addicted brain is going to start convincing you that it's okay to cheat just this one time. And then you went off of it. If you're an abstainer, that's going to take you right down. If you're a moderator, it might not be much of an issue. But most people I find that are doing this are abstainers. And it's an easy way to start getting into the habit of, oh, I'll just start again tomorrow, or I'll start again on Monday. I've already ruined the week or the weekend. Don't do that to yourself. Stay satiated, stay comfortably full, eat when you're hungry. My third tip is get plenty of water. Don't drink too much all at once. Drink consistently all through the day. So I learned in college, you know when you're hydrated when your urine is lemonade color. If it's dark, you're dehydrated. If it's too light and it's on the clear side, you're overhydrated. If you're overhydrated, you're flushing minerals out of your body. And there's a good chance that you're going to start getting leg cramps. Your body's already going to possibly deal with leg cramps because your electrolyte balance is off for the first few weeks. So we want to try and make sure that this is as little of an issue as possible. So drink lots of water, but don't guzzle a lot all at once. I always had that problem. And I found out after years that was giving me leg cramps. I have no more than 3/4 of a glass to a glass stretched out over about a 5-minute window, as opposed to taking a big glass and just guzzling it. It's just saved me from a lot of leg cramps. I finally figured that out after all those years, probably about 20 years of bad leg cramps. I was overhydrating, and not only that, I was drinking too much all at once. So a common problem when people start a carnivore diet because their body's all screwed up because of their electrolyte balance, because you've knocked out carbohydrates. Carbohydrates keep your cells hydrated. So now you're flushing out electrolytes and your body doesn't quite know what to do at first. So it's not uncommon people get diarrhea. So there's a few ways to combat diarrhea. If you have an important event coming up and you can't risk diarrhea that day, Maybe the day before or that day, have more cheese. It's not good advice in general to do this, but if you need to manage your diarrhea for an important event, cheese will help slow things down. So it might take a bit of cheese. I had a lot of cheese in the last week, not a crazy amount, but a lot for me. I got this horrible zit from all the cheese that I had. I never get acne anymore, but I will if I have too much cheese. So if you couldn't take your eyes off of this zit before, that's all you're going to be able to focus on now. Hey, buddy. My dog is here. He wants to say hello. You want to come up? Come on. This is my boy K9, and he's feeling really scared right now because he heard a thud from the neighbor, and he's sort of a special needs dog, so he's pretty wigged out. So my apologies. He may be in here in the next shot, or he might be gone. We'll figure it out. So something you want to do to combat the diarrhea is have a little less fat in your diet. Having less fat and eating a little leaner is another way to combat that. So cheese, eating maybe more chicken or more turkey might not be a bad way to go to help manage some of that diarrhea, because the higher fat can contribute to the diarrhea as your body's adjusting to a high fat diet. So another thing in that category is salt. Maybe cut back on your salt intake, because salt will loosen your stool if you have a high concentration of salt in your body. You're being a camera hog now. Yeah, you're being a camera hog. What do you do if you're dealing with constipation? Well, constipation is the opposite problem, right? Now, if you haven't gone to the bathroom in a few days and your waistline isn't getting bigger and you feel great, but you haven't gone to the bathroom, that's really nothing to worry about. You're possibly just not eating enough and your body's utilizing all that fuel. So if you notice that you're not feeling comfortable, constipation is when you're having a rough time going to the bathroom, having a bowel movement. That's when you know you're constipated. So if you're having difficulty going to the bathroom, what you might want to do is have more fat in your diet. Have more red meat, have higher fat red meat. That's going to help move things along. It most likely is that you're not getting enough fat. So you can also increase your salt and cut out the dairy. Dairy is probably one of the contributing factors. I think dairy is fine when you're starting a carnivore diet because it's helping you to maintain this lifestyle in the beginning. After a while, if dairy is a difficulty for you, you can start dealing with that problem down the road. Right now, it's helping you stick to a carnivore diet. Stick with it. If your sleep is suffering, as mine did whenever I did a carnivore diet, especially a red meat diet, I found there was nothing I could do. I was getting like 6 hours sleep, then 5 hours sleep, and it wasn't easy for me to maintain. I felt good through the day, but I was just not getting enough calories. That was one of the problems. And more importantly, I was eating too lean. When I increased my fat calories, it made a world of difference in my sleep. So I want you to try and keep in mind, maybe more fat in your diet might be a good way to go. So you can try changing the ratios of higher fat, a little lower protein, or you can just try adding extra fat. I wouldn't worry about calories in the beginning. Not in the beginning, because you're probably going to lose weight from getting carbohydrates out of your diet. So as far as the weight loss goes, worry more about inches than pounds. And last, but definitely not least, is cut out artificial sweeteners. Artificial sweeteners are going to keep your sugar and carbohydrate cravings alive. And it's a really difficult thing in the first few weeks, especially, probably for the first 3 months in my experience, but especially the first few weeks, to cut out the carbohydrate addiction. So the carbohydrate addiction is difficult when you're having these artificial sweeteners because your brain can't tell the difference between artificial sweeteners and regular sweet foods. So it still plays a trick on your brain and your dopamine receptors, and it's keeping those cravings alive. You know how I said earlier, there's a few things you might not want to do in the beginning of a carnivore diet because it's going to be too difficult to tackle too many situations all at once. Say cutting out dairy or binge eating. Cutting out artificial sweeteners, in my opinion, is something that you want to do from the very beginning, because you want to get rid of those carbohydrate cravings as soon as possible. Tear off the Band-Aid fast. It's going to suck, but something that might help a little bit through that. You can try and get more potassium in your diet and see if that helps. So there's a lot of tips I could have thrown at you, but I wanted to make this a short, concise video with only a top few really highly important tips. So what has worked for you? When you started a carnivore diet or you're having difficulty starting, what do you find are the best things for you to keep in mind when starting a carnivore diet? Everyone's had different experiences with this, and most of the people have to struggle with these issues, but there are some other issues the odd person has to struggle with. So leave a comment, let me know. And as well, if you like this video, leave a thumbs up and subscribe. I really appreciate it. Thanks a lot and take care.